everybody, and welcome to the Hindsight 2020 reader tag. This is a slightly different tag to usual. Instead of it being really a book tag and I, wave books enthusiastically at you, it's questions about your reading habits and your reading sort of journey and sort of reflecting on how you sort of got to where you are now, which is really interesting. So I'm quite interested to answer all these questions. I was tagged by Walker7, so I'll leave a link to his channel down below. You should definitely go check his stuff out. And yeah, as I said, these are some really interesting questions. It's quite different from what the tags I usually do, so we're going to go on with it. Question number 1 is, what were you like as an early and learning reader? Starting off, a fun fact, apparently, according to my mum, because obviously I'm not going to remember this because I was like 2 or 3, and my dad doesn't remember, but then he's terrible at remembering things from when I was a kid. But my mum has told me that apparently I kind of taught myself to read. Apparently I was at nursery, which is like a sort of, I think it's like American kindergarten in Scotland. We have nursery that you do before you start school. And they'll start to teach you things there like, colours and numbers and things. But yeah, apparently I was just sitting looking at these sort of books that they had on like, kids' books that they had, and like with my head like that. And they were like, what are you doing, Mary? And I was like, oh, I'm reading the spines. And they were like, who the fuck taught you to read? So apparently I taught myself. We reckon I picked it up because my older sister, who's about 2.5 years older than me, she was learning to read at the time, so they reckon I possibly picked it up just from sitting at the table with her and perhaps just paying attention to what she was doing. So yeah, fun fact. But yeah, so I was, I've always read from a really early age, and the first books I remember reading and things were things like this book called Ant and Bee and the Rainbow, which is about this ant and this bee that find this like tire in the ground that they start painting, and like they have their own swings on it and stuff, and it's really cute. And it's about that big as well, which is just adorable. I think it was my uncle's as well when he was a kid, so like it's a really sort of special book to our family. So it was the classic Very Hungry Caterpillar. I remember reading that book over and over and over again as a kid because you could go through it and see the holes that it makes in the pages and stuff, and the art's really cool. As well as this book series of fairies. So like it was like Ruby the Red Fairy and Saffron the Yellow Fairy, and you had all these different fairy stories. Like the first series was all about colours, and the second series was all about weather fairies and stuff, and I freaking loved these books. I read them so many times. I only had the first 2 series because like they go on to like, country fairies and flag fairies, and there's like loads of them, but I only ever read the first 2, which is the colours and the weather fairies. And yeah, I think that's also where my like love of fairies and stuff, because you can see my shelf behind me. I have a few fairy models that I started collecting. This one is the first one I actually got when I was a kid. I was about 5, so she's about 16 years old now. And my favourite actually is this one, because obviously she's reading a book, and yeah, I just, book fairy, we love her. I actually got her from a really cool shop on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. It's like loads of witchy stuff in there, and they had loads of bottle fairies, which was cool. That's where I got her. But yeah, so yeah, that's sort of what I remember like my really early reading being about and stuff. And as I said, that fun fact about how I taught myself to read apparently. And question number 2 is, what books or book series really got you excited about reading as a kid? So as I said, the fairy series and stuff I used to really love, but I also read a shit ton of Enid Blyton books. So Famous 5, Secret 7, Mallory Towers, St. Clair's, the Secret Mountain, the Adventure series. I read all of them. Mostly because my mum, when she was a kid, had all the Famous 5 and all the Secret 7, and we still have, so then I read her copies. So we have these really old books up in our attic that are from, the 70s. So they're about 40 years old now. Yeah, that we just have, and if me and my sister ever have kids, they'll probably read them too or something. Although Enid Blyton is a little bit problematic these days, so maybe not. But yeah, so I read, that those are like, there's like 20 books in the Famous 5, there's like 17 or something, or over 10 in the Secret 7 and things. So I think definitely those books, just because there's so many, and yeah, I read all of them. I just really loved all those stories that she had about all those kids and things. And we had some on audiobooks as well, which was really fun. My favourite was definitely the third one of the Famous 5, which was 5 Run Away Together, where they like run away to the island and like, camp in a cave and stuff. Like, God, I wanted to do that so badly as a kid. It was just to find a cave to live in for like a week. So from there, yeah, like I said, my mum's copies, and then from there, my primary 5 teacher, so primary 5 in Scotland's about 9 or 10. So she recommended, because the aforementioned teaching myself to read, I had a really high reading comprehension, and that was really picked up, especially with the new school I ended up going to once I moved into the city. So I was always really encouraged to read and stuff. So she recommended this book series of Fictional the Wrath Monk by Ian O'Grovey, and I fucking loved that series. There's about 6 books in that, and that's really fun. It's about this boy who lives with this thing called a wrath monk, which is a sort of evil wizard who has a rain cloud over his head all the time. And I loved that series so much. It was so much fun. It was so ridiculous. And my favourite was definitely Miso and the... Oh, is it Miso and the Malachis? Is that the 3rd one? And then the last one as well. I can't remember what that one was called, but I'll have it on the screen. Those were my favourites. I loved that series so much, so thanks to my teacher for introducing me to that. And then my dad... This was probably around the same time, because like I said, my teacher was trying to sort of get me to really up my reading and move on to sort of middle grade type books. So my dad got me the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness by Michelle Paver, which coincidentally has restarted in the last year. She's just released the 7th book, Viper's Daughter, which I'm so excited for. So starting with Wolf Brother, this is sort of Stone Age sort of story about this boy who can talk to wolves and stuff, and after his father dies, he ends up sort of going on the run and trying to just find people to look after him, and he sort of gets taken in by the Raven clan, and there's these sort of evil mages and stuff, and he's got his wolf friend that he kind of picks up, and it's a really great series. I absolutely love it. So, but I remember my dad got me, these are the first 3 in this omnibus, and it sat on my shelf for ages, and it just took me forever to get around to reading it, and then I read it, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, so like I said, Enid Blighted, and then the Mies on the Wrath Monk series, and then Chronicles of Ancient Darkness really, I think, just kick-started my excitement about reading. Question number 3 is, has there been a person in your life, real or fictional, that inspired you to be a reader? Not particularly, but as I said, I guess my mum, because like I said, she had all those Enid Blyton books, so it's kind of really through her that I really, just her having those and then encouraging me to read them, that really kick-started my reading. And as well, like I said, my parents in general, I was always really encouraged to read, and as I said, my school, so definitely I think just my parents really, especially my dad, for some reason he sort of got it into his head one year that me and my sister really needed to read more, and then got mad when we spent all our time reading and not doing anything else. Make up your mind. Number 4 is, at what point did you begin to identify as a reader? Absolutely no idea. As I said, I have always read, I've been reading since I was a kid. I've always just had my nose in a book. I guess maybe when I was about 7, because I remember vividly, that was when I started taking books on holiday, and just always, and then needing to take more than 1 or 2. I'd take 5 with me at a time, and then I would have finished them in the week. Yeah, I think that was about when people really realised, yeah, Mary will just sit and spend her entire time reading. As well as especially my first year of secondary school. So in Scotland you have primary school and you have secondary school. Primary school you're just in a class and your teacher basically handles all your topics, apart from in my school for things like art and music we had to go to other teachers for that. And then secondary school is when you move from class to class and things. So I think it's middle school and high school, I think is kind of the same thing in America. And it's a similar thing I think in England as well. So my first year of secondary school, because my school was one of the schools that had both a primary school and a secondary school, it's quite common here that there's loads of individual primary schools and then everyone will sort of go to a local high school, which is a bit bigger. And then my school, because it's one of the ones in the city, it did have a primary school attached to the secondary school. So when we got to secondary school, we had loads of new people come in from, primary schools that had just had primary schools. And the 2 friends that I sort of had, we sort of got split into different sets, so we were in completely different classes, so we just didn't see each other anymore, and that kind of fell apart. So I had no friends in first year, because it was all these new people, I was really shy, and the sort of one group of girls that I kind of tried to get in with were the really bitchy people, so they just completely left me, despite the fact that I knew I wasn't going to be best friends with them. I was hey, you could at least give me someone to just sit with at lunchtime, so I'm not just wandering around with nothing to do. So I ended up just going to the library before school, at break time and at lunchtime, all the time. So the librarian was my best friend in first year. And I think that's also just really solidified, Yeah, Mary's a reader, she'll spend all her time in the library. She just reads, and that was when I was just, reading and reading and reading. Question number 5 is, how has reading shaped your life and worldview? I don't know, as I said, it was like, it's what I had when I didn't have friends and stuff, so it kind of stopped me from feeling really lonely at school and just in general, and I think from that I've become a very independent person. Like, I live by myself now, I moved away from home, I don't have flatmates and stuff, I just live by myself, and I'm fine with that. I'll go to things by myself, I'll go out for dinner by myself, I'll go to concerts and things by myself. I'm a very independent, solitary person. I think that has come from reading, although hilariously I have also met so many friends through reading. Like, I'm not in any way saying that reading's not a social thing to do, because so many friends I've had have been through us liking the same books. Like, me and one of my friends from school, we had World Book Days every year. I don't know if that's an international thing or just a UK thing. I think it's an international thing. In March, so my school, we used to get to dress up as our favourite characters on World Book Day, and I dressed up as Annabeth Chase from the Percy Jackson series in primary 7 when I was about 12. 11, 12, primary 7, and me and this girl, because our two sort of primary 7 classes were right next to each other, we literally walked out the door at the same time, both dressed as Annabeth, and we were like, yo, you're Annabeth too! So that was my friend Anna, who I'm still friends with to this day, and that was basically where our friendship started, because we both loved Percy Jackson. And then similarly, just because I love reading and I got involved with fandoms and things that way, I got into other sort of communities and stuff online, and that's actually how I ended up with my internet friends in Canada, who I have now met in real life and are some lifelong friends. So I guess reading shaped my world like that. You ever sort of get a question and it kind of causes you to have an existential crisis because you have to think about things, and yeah, so I think I used reading to cope with my parents' divorce. Because I was largely unaffected by that, and I used to just sit and read all the time. That explains a lot. I've literally, how have I never worked that out before? That's taken 14 years for me to get to that conclusion of, hey, this is kind of why you're alright with that. I guess I've never really thought about it. Anyway, and a similar thing to what I've seen other people in this video say, it's really helpful a sort of empathy to other people, and there's always more to people's story. You don't know what everyone's thinking. I think I've become quite an empathetic person and able to, even in reading, I can always, just in general, I can always look at a book and say, oh, I can tell what they were going for, I can tell why other people would like this. So I think, even if it's not something I particularly like, so I think I can also bring that sort of perspective to just life in general and meeting other people. And as well, when you read and stuff, especially nowadays with the sort of expanse of fantasy and things going into other cultures and things, you do learn a lot about other people and other places and other cultures and religions and stuff from authors who write that sort of stuff into their books. So I think it's, it's just a huge learning thing that you can do. And yes, that's it. That's the 5 questions. Hopefully this wasn't too long. I think I've sort of rambled on about myself a little bit too much. But yeah, I thought these were quite interesting questions. I hope you enjoyed my answers and found it entertaining of me coming to a conclusion about my coping mechanisms. Let me know your answers to these questions. I would absolutely love to hear from you and what you think of, what were some of the first books you remember reading? When did you consider yourself a reader? I would absolutely love to hear from you. I love it when you guys comment. It's just so, I love it so much. It's why I started this booktube, is to talk to other people about books. So please comment. Please leave your answers to these questions in the description below. And in terms of tagging other people, I still don't know too many people on booktube, and the ones that I do know, I think have already done this or have already been tagged. So if you want to do this, tag you're it. Definitely let me know if you do it because you considered me to have tagged you. I would love to see your video. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.